The story kicks off with a young boy named Cain Schwartz introducing himself as the kingdom's prince to a young girl named Vyaria. Vyaria appears visibly frightened as she greets Cain, introducing herself as the daughter of the Duke of Sten. At that moment, Cain can't help but be utterly captivated by Vyaria's stunning beauty. Cain's father, the king of Kairos, good-naturedly teases him upon noticing Cain's blushing. It turns out they're right in the midst of a meeting to arrange the engagement of Cain and Vyaria. However, Vyaria can't stop trembling throughout, leaving Cain to wonder about the source of her fear. Despite her trembling, Vyaria musters the courage to request permission to speak. With trepidation, she inquires if it might be feasible to postpone their engagement. Her question takes everyone, including Cain, by surprise. Seeking clarification, Cain asks Vyaria if she indeed means to suggest a delay. The king then presses her to elaborate. Still trembling, Vyaria attempts to explain herself, assuring them that she doesn't intend to decline the engagement. She goes on to express her anxiety about assuming her new role and requests some time to prepare until Cain reaches an appropriate age. Currently, Cain is just 10 years old, which means Vyaria's request entails an 8-year delay. This revelation leaves the king visibly taken aback, prompting him to seek Cain's input on the matter. After considering the fact that this is their first in-person encounter, Cain believes that it wouldn't be too late to proceed with the engagement after they've had the chance to become better acquainted. Upon hearing this, Vyaria experiences a sense of relief, particularly when Cain notices her unwell appearance and suggests concluding the meeting so she can rest. Consequently, the king decides to shorten the delay to 5 years. During their journey back home, Vyaria's father inquires about her recent behavior, to which she simply replies that she got frightened. However, the truth is far more complex. Vyaria is burdened with the weight of a future, or rather a past, that she is determined to prevent from becoming a reality. It all began when Vyaria was just 16 years old. After a year of marriage to King Cain, their union had already crumbled into a fractured relationship. Whenever Vyaria exerted herself to do something for Cain, he averted his gaze, deeming her a nuisance. Then, on one fateful day, Vyaria made a final attempt to win her husband's heart. She ventured into Cain's chamber, but an abrupt, thunderous crash emanated from within. To the astonishment of all, a girl from another universe materialized in the king's bedroom. This enigmatic traveler, named Kana Serizawa, was described as a rare interdimensional voyager by the king. He embraced her presence and soon acknowledged her as his mistress. Cain had never broached the subject of divorce until Kana's arrival. Tender caresses and affectionate words had never been bestowed upon Vyaria by Cain. The court began to ridicule her as a completely ineffectual queen, drawing comparisons with Kana, and even gave Vyaria the nickname, the Princess of Blue Roses, symbolizing the unattainable. Once, a man by the name of Franz approached Vyaria, who was visibly dejected. He kindly invited her to engage in a private conversation, promising to regale her with the most scintillating topics of the town. He persistently flirted with her in an attempt to put her at ease. Little did Vyaria know at the time that this chance encounter would ultimately shape her unforeseen future. Since Kana's arrival, Cain had been increasingly distant, causing people to gradually drift away from Vyaria's side. Vyaria consistently made efforts to bridge the emotional gap, pondering over what she might have done to deserve such treatment. Suddenly, Franz called out her name, V, a special nickname he had for Vyaria, and reached out to comfort her from behind. As they strolled together, Vyaria found herself swept away by Franz's kindness. Then, a major announcement resonated through the palace. Kana was expecting Cain's child. Upon hearing the news, Vyaria couldn't help but feel a profound sadness. It seemed only natural for Kana to bear Cain's child since he and Vyaria had never shared the same bed. Franz, who had come to Vyaria's chamber and found her in tears, made every effort to console her. At that moment, Vyaria's heartache was palpable, and she found herself deeply moved by Franz's gentle kindness. Sometime after Vyaria committed her transgression, Kana suffered a tragic fall down a flight of stairs, resulting in a miscarriage. Coincidentally, Vyaria discovered that she was pregnant around the same time. News of these developments quickly reached King Cain, who was consumed by anger at the revelation. However, Cain asserted that she had been pushed from behind, offering no further explanation. Without concrete evidence, Cain hastily concluded that Vyaria was the culprit. While incarcerated, Vyaria tirelessly maintained her innocence, confiding in a guard that she had been in the company of Franz. The guard, however, promptly dismissed her claims, stating that they had already questioned Franz, who denied ever meeting her privately. This revelation left Vyaria even more shaken, unable to fathom that Franz had betrayed her and disowned their child. Therefore, Cain made the grim decision to carry out Vyaria's execution, convinced that she had attempted to harm Kana. Despite Vyaria's desperate pleas for clemency on behalf of her unborn child, Cain remained resolute, declaring that both mother and child must face the consequences. Thus, at the tender age of 17, Queen Vyaria met her tragic end, beheaded by her own husband, King Cain. Following her execution at the age of 17, Vyaria inexplicably awoke in the body of her 7-year-old self. In order to prevent the recurrence of those dreadful events in her second life, Vyaria is driven to reshape her future. Her return to the past, seemingly guided by fate, fills her with the realization that her destiny may not be irrevocably fixed. By taking that bold step, she has already altered the trajectory of events, instilling in her a steadfast belief that this time, she will not falter. Prince Cain has extended an invitation to Vyaria for tea, and as declining is not an option, she accepts. However, her lingering fear of him remains apparent. Despite his youth, Cain bears a striking resemblance to the Cain she was once wed to, triggering haunting memories of her past conviction. Nevertheless, she endeavors not to exhibit her apprehension. While seated, Cain observes her unwell appearance and advises her against pushing herself too hard. Vyaria discerns this as a marked departure from her past experiences, as it seems that Cain now genuinely cares for her. His unexpected smile catches Vyaria off guard, leading her to reminisce about her previous life. When she was 7 back then, she had been brimming with excitement when she first met Cain, but he had come across as cold-hearted, scarcely paying any real attention to Vyaria. In this life, Cain expresses his desire to get to know her better. However, Vyaria remains apprehensive, fearing that Cain might abandon her once Kana arrives. This uncertainty leads her to contemplate whether she should keep her distance. In an effort to avoid a potentially bleak future, Vyaria delves into the library, searching for clues. As she is about to start reading a book, Franz suddenly approaches, takes the book, introduces himself, and greets Vyaria as the future queen, leaving her in shock. She wonders if Franz also remembers his past life like she does, and this thought terrifies her. Based on the book she had taken, Franz assumes that Vyaria has also returned. This resurfaces her memories of their past life, when Franz's betrayal had led to her execution. Franz attempts to explain the reasons behind his actions in their past life, and feigns an apology for making her endure it alone. Vyaria struggles to release herself from Franz's grip and stumbles to the ground. At that moment, Cain is nearby and appears bewildered to see Vyaria in distress. In a panic, Cain inquires if she is all right and what happened. Witnessing Vyaria trembling when Franz approaches, Cain steps in to protect her, pushing Franz away. Vyaria attempts to stand on her own and requests permission to leave, but Cain is concerned about her well-being and offers to provide her with a knight as an escort. As they walk, Vyaria attempts to recollect memories of her past life. Based on her recollections, Cain and Franz were not meant to cross paths in this manner. Although recent events leave her feeling confused, she remains determined to find answers on her own. While working, Cain confides in his subordinate, Smitry, discussing Vyaria, who still seems to be afraid of him, and even questions if he appears cold-hearted. Cain notices that Vyaria is only afraid of him, and not of others. He wonders if he might have unintentionally hurt her feelings, but he cannot recall any such incident. Cain becomes frustrated by Vyaria's consistent apprehension whenever she is around him, as he genuinely desires to get closer to her. He ponders what he should do next. Meanwhile, Vyaria, who is borrowing some books from the library, finds nothing useful. However, she suddenly recalls her past life, when Cain accused her of pushing Kana, causing a fall down the stairs. While contemplating this memory, she comes up with an idea to create an impression for Cain that she doesn't hold any affection for him. She believes that if he thinks she doesn't like him, he won't be wary of her, even if they become engaged. In the next meeting with Cain, Vyaria, though she still gets butterflies when she sees him, manages to maintain some distance. Surprisingly, Cain converses with her as if they were friends. She realizes that her earlier strategy was effective. Approaching Cain differently has started to change their relationship. Now, Vyaria believes that all she needs is for Cain to become attracted to someone else. However, Vyaria notices something in Cain's demeanor that suggests he has something to tell her, and this realization fills her with fear. Vyaria is now 10 years old, which means 3 years have passed since she first met Cain. At this point, she's merely a prospective bride. In her previous life, they were officially engaged when she was 7 years old. The king passed away when Vyaria was 13, and Cain ascended to the throne at the age of 16. She became his wife at 15, thus becoming the queen. Tragically, the day after Vyaria's 16th birthday in her previous life, Kana appeared in Cain's bed, and Vyaria was beheaded at the age of 17. The thought of her time running out is making her anxious, and she feels like she's losing her mind. As she tries to calm herself, she realizes that when she turns 12, she'll start attending tea parties. At that point, she plans to search for a lady who might catch Cain's fancy, and if he falls in love with that lady, he could become engaged to her instead of Vyaria. She believes that by consistently taking actions that diverge from her previous path, there might still be hope for a different future. Accompanying her father, Vyaria is on her way to Mutin, a place she has never visited before. Mutin is located at the edge of the Duchy of Sten, and it's known for its abundant greenery. In simple terms, Mutin is in the middle of nowhere and doesn't have anything particularly special about it, except that it serves as the hideout for the Death Squad Hombre. Vyaria learned this fact after becoming queen in her previous life. She wonders if Hombre might already be active, believing they are willing to do anything for the right price. If she can find a way to reach them, she might have a chance at survival, although it's a risky bet. Her father interrupts her deep thought, informing her that Cain sent her a flower, specifically some very rare blue roses. Upon hearing this, Vyaria is taken aback. In her previous life, Vyaria was known as the Princess of Blue Roses due to her gloomy and seemingly useless nature. Vyaria wonders if Cain also remembers their previous life, which could be the reason he sent her the blue roses. She then asks her father if she can visit a place in Mutin. As far as she can recall, Hombre used the Hotham forest as their hideout. However, as Vyaria strolls around the forest, there's no sign of them. Suddenly, the weather takes a turn for the worse, and the servants suggest returning to the villa. On their way back, Vyaria's carriage is involved in an accident, and she is thrown from the carriage, tumbling down a cliff. It's a miracle that Vyaria survived, landing in the bushes. She decides to seek shelter until help arrives, but as she scans the area, she spots a person lying on the ground. Vyaria approaches the person and tries to wake him. As she notices his weapon, she wonders if he might be one of the Hombre, a group she's seeking. Although he looks suspicious, Vyaria decides to assist him. Fortunately, she discovers a nearby cave and takes the man inside. Exhausted, she eventually falls asleep. Suddenly, someone wakes her up. As she opens her eyes, she sees the man she aided earlier, holding a knife to her throat and questioning her identity. Vyaria remains calm and relieved that the man is now well. Shivering from the cold, she explains that she helped him earlier. The man softens his gaze and promptly wraps Vyaria in his coat. Without hesitation, Vyaria asks him if he is a member of Hombre as she wishes to meet them. The man responds that he is not a member but is part of the underworld, and he was ambushed by someone jealous of his score. He advises Vyaria to stay away from Hombre, but she shares her story, unwilling to miss any opportunities. Meanwhile, in the palace, a knight informs Cain of Vyaria's accident. Acting without much thought, Cain decides to head to Mutin immediately. Smitry advises him to stay calm, explaining that the king is preparing to eliminate Hombre and that Cain would only tip them off by going to their hideout. Although aware of the risks, Cain realizes he's not thinking rationally at the moment. With a worried expression, Cain insists on going to look for Vyaria. Seeing this side of Cain surprises Smitry, as he's never seen Cain care so much for someone before, leading him to believe that Cain has indeed changed. Back in the cave, after Vyaria has shared her story, she is surprised that the man believes her account of her previous life and her return to her 7-year-old self. The man asks her whom she wants him to kill, as that's what most people seek from him. Vyaria clarifies that she doesn't want that, but rather she wants him to help her escape if things get worse. The man teases her about proposing to him, to which Vyaria clarifies that she's discussing his job, not a proposal. What she desires is an escape plan, so the man writes down an address and instructs her to go there when she needs him. The man suddenly inquires if Vyaria has ever considered seeking revenge. She states that the thought has never crossed her mind. The man praises Vyaria for her strength, as she wishes to change her future without harming anyone, which he sees as the trait of a fighter. He reminds her that despite her previous life as a queen, she's currently just a child and has the right to live a happy life. These kind words move Vyaria to tears, washing away her negative feelings and filling her heart with warmth. After their lengthy conversation, they realize they haven't exchanged names. Vyaria asks the man for his name, but he reveals that he doesn't have one. Vyaria eagerly selects a name for him and names him Wizard. Wizard then inquires about her plans. Does she want to run away with him, or is she going to keep trying? Vyaria considers it a good opportunity to escape, but decides to keep trying for a while longer, hoping she can change the future. Vyaria acknowledges that she has been seeing the previous King Cain from the beginning, refusing to see him for who he is now. He might truly change, just as she's not the same person as before. So far, Cain has done nothing to harm her, but she has been afraid of him, avoiding him as much as possible. Vyaria ponders whether she has hurt Cain a lot and decides to face him properly once she returns home. As she falls asleep, she wonders if their relationship, or even their future, will change because the Cain she is dealing with right now is not yet a king. He's just an innocent 13-year-old boy. As Vyaria opens her eyes, she wonders where she is. Suddenly, Cain appears before her, looking visibly worried. He explains that they're still in Mutin and that he rescued her when she was found unconscious in a cave with the help of a witness. Vyaria wonders if the witness is Wizard. Observing Vyaria, Cain wonders if she fears him more than anything. He wants to ask why, but is concerned it might frighten her more, so he decides to let Vyaria rest and asks for permission to leave. However, Vyaria suddenly calls out to him, asking him to wait. This makes Cain happy as it's the first time she's done that since they met. He asks her what's on her mind. Vyaria hesitantly asks him why he would take the trouble to see her. Cain explains that he was worried about her. Summoning her courage, Vyaria tells him that she thought Cain didn't like her. Cain is taken aback by this. Ever since he first met her 3 years ago, he's always thought of Vyaria as a lovely young lady. He has been aware of how Vyaria kept her distance and appeared fearful. Considering her lineage and age, Vyaria is the best prospect to be the next queen. Cain was trying to build a good relationship with her for the sake of his father. However, Vyaria always seemed to be afraid of something, and this has puzzled Cain. He considered various factors, like his facial expressions and carefully choosing his words when he spoke. He tried to facilitate conversations to improve their relationship, but they just never seemed to work. Ironically, his efforts appeared to be doing more harm than good. Cain also noticed that Vyaria seemed comfortable with everyone else, leaving him to wonder why she was afraid of him. So he decided to send Vyaria flowers, hoping it would improve their relationship and that the blue roses would symbolize a miracle. One day, as Cain continued to search for a solution, he saw Vyaria laughing happily, an emotion she had never shown when she was with him. He wondered how he could get her to show him that smile. In that moment, Cain realizes that he loves Vyaria. Vyaria is shocked and asks why he's saying this after all this time. Cain wonders if he made her wait too long and asks if she doesn't like him. He tells her that he doesn't understand why she fears him so much, but if she is afraid of his very existence, he offers to call off the engagement. Cain assures her she can take her time with her answer and that she won't have to see him again, if that's what she wishes. Vyaria tries to stop Cain but finds it challenging to explain her thoughts. It never occurred to her that Cain had feelings for her. After all, Cain is supposed to fall in love with Kana. Vyaria wonders what will happen if Kana appears 6 years from now. Will she be executed again? But suddenly she recalls what Wizard told her. In this world, Cain isn't the king yet, so maybe things will turn around if she starts establishing a connection with Cain. Although Cain is different from the man she knows, Vyaria is still afraid of trusting him. She ponders whether she can change the future if she doesn't believe that Cain could be different. Vyaria then expresses her desire to trust him. Cain states that he will work hard so that Vyaria will genuinely fall in love with him someday, no matter how long it takes. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes, Vyaria believes that the Cain in front of her is a different person, and she wants to trust him. Subsequently, Vyaria is officially engaged to Cain. It's been 3 years since Cain and Vyaria got engaged, and the late king passed away 3 months ago. History is progressing as expected. Cain's coronation took place after mourning his father's death. Cain Schwartz was crowned king, and their wedding won't happen until Vyaria turns 15. History is unfolding as it did before. Cain is occupied with his duties as the new king and barely has time for himself, but he sends Vyaria flowers every day. These flowers help her feel his love and care for her. Now Vyaria has a nickname, Ally, which she told Cain when he asked what to call her. V is a common nickname for Vyaria, but the last person who called her by that name was Franz. Whenever she hears that name, it terrifies her to the point of feeling as if she might lose her mind. Vyaria is 13 now, and Cain has just turned 16. She doesn't have much time left. Despite Cain expressing his love for her, she wonders if his feelings will remain the same after Kana's arrival. Meanwhile, in the palace, Cain appears tired while attending the soiree. Smitry approaches him with a drink, noticing his fatigued expression. All Cain wishes for is to see Vyaria, as she has finally started opening up to him, and he fears she might close herself off again. Suddenly, Smitry informs him that the daughter of Count Vicha is asking to speak to him in private. Initially declining, Cain changes his mind when Smitry reveals that it concerns Vyaria. So, he grants Lady Vicha permission to speak with him privately. Cain straightforwardly tells Lady Vicha to get to the point. Although she is known as Vyaria's friend, Cain wonders what she wants. Lady Vicha suddenly tells Cain that Vyaria has another lover besides him. This surprises Cain, but Lady Vicha goes further, revealing that Vyaria told her she is seeing a man named Franz George. Cain is left speechless, with many questions swirling in his mind. After considering it, he remembers that Franz is the man who had an altercation with Vyaria in the library. He wonders why Vyaria would be involved with such a man. With a firm look, Cain states that Lady Vicha has wasted her time because he trusts Vyaria. He adds that even if Vyaria is being unfaithful, he will play along with her lies until she is ready to speak the truth and asserts that he will stand by her side. Suddenly, Cain asks Lady Vicha for Vyaria's nickname as he had been preoccupied with work and forgot it. Lady Vicha struggles to recall Vyaria's nickname, and knowing V is a common one for Vyaria, tells Cain that Vyaria allowed her to call her V. Cain then mentions that Vyaria won't let even her fiancé call her by that name, as it upsets her to be called V. Unexpectedly, Cain begins to feel strange, as if his body is burning up. It becomes evident that something was in the drink Cain consumed, and Smitry was involved in a plot with Lady Vicha. Smitry leaves them alone as Cain feels helpless, and Lady Vicha moves closer to him, suggesting that she will end his misery if he accepts her as his queen. Meanwhile, Smitry has arranged for a servant to enter the room just as they finish up. He planned for the scandal to help position Lady Vicha as the next queen, ensuring that when Kana arrives 3 years from now, it will be her and not Vyaria who faces execution. It's revealed that it's not only Vyaria and Franz who remember their past lives. Smitry's actions are driven by his memories of the past life. Smitry knows that Cain will soon become infatuated with Kana to the extent that he will allow concubinage in the kingdom, turning into a corrupt king who disregards politics and the lives of his people, all for that woman. He terminated those who spoke up for the kingdom, including Smitri. Lady Vicha approached him, offering to promote him in exchange for information, as the Vicha family aspires to lead the kingdom. But at that time, Smitri couldn't betray Cain, even though he had become foolish. As a result, the Vicha family massacred his entire family. Miraculously, Smitri also returned to the past, seeing this as his opportunity for revenge. Though Smitri acknowledges that Cain and Vyaria look cute together, he recognizes that Cain is not the same as he was in Smitri's previous life. In this world, Cain might not turn into a corrupted king who prioritizes his mistress and disregards the lives of his own people. However, it's already too late to halt Smitri's plan, as he is here for vengeance. As Lady Vicha takes action, Cain uses a hidden knife to scratch her and attempts to push her away. Fortunately, the guards hear the commotion and come to the rescue. As a result, rumors spread that Smitri had left the palace and the Vicha family had been demoted to Viscount, leading everyone to suspect either a love affair or a conspiracy. Vyaria is in shock when she receives an invitation to Cain's rose garden. She recalls that the garden was a special place for Cain and Canna, and she hardly ever stepped foot in there. However, she has no reason not to go now that she is Cain's fiancée. As Vyaria walks in the garden, suddenly she trips and falls to the ground. Cain, who sees this, helps her stand and treats her wound kindly. He also expresses how scared he was at the thought of something happening to Vyaria. Cain then kisses Vyaria's hand, which surprises her. He asks Vyaria to call him by his name, Cain. Vyaria is stunned, as in her previous life, only Canna was allowed to call him that, and now she can't believe her ears. Vyaria summons her courage to call Cain by his name. Seeing how hard Vyaria is trying, Cain apologizes for rushing things and invites her for tea. But this time, Vyaria doesn't want to let Cain down, as she believes this life is definitely different from the one she's familiar with, so she thinks she has to confront her fears. She then calls out to Cain by his name. Hearing that, Cain feels so happy, and he smiles brightly. He thanks Vyaria for making his dream come true, like the blue roses that symbolize a dream come true. It's been 6 years since time reversed itself. At first, Cain was only an object of fear, but every time he reaches out to her, she feels like he's not the same person she knew him to be. Now Vyaria is starting to acknowledge that she is falling in love with Cain once again. Cain opens up that he was a child with little emotion. As a crown prince who attracted those thirsty for power, he tried to distance himself from such people as much as possible, but in the process, he ended up becoming a cold-hearted person. Hearing that, Vyaria wonders if she was no different from those selfish people. In her previous life, she desperately longed for Cain's love and affection, and never considered how he must have felt. Vyaria starts to wonder if that's the reason why Cain rejected her in the past. Cain explains that Vyaria is different. She never acts hostile toward anyone, even if she doesn't like that person. She always keeps her true feelings to herself. They are different in so many ways, but that's why Cain fell in love with her. He claims it once again that he loves her so much. 2 years go by after that, and not much changes between the two of them. And today is the day of their wedding. Vyaria wonders if she's made the right decision. She might get executed again when Canna arrives a year later, but now she's officially become the crowned queen. In the chamber, Vyaria blushes, thinking that tonight is their bridal night. She suddenly remembers that Cain never showed up on their bridal night in her previous life. Thinking of that makes Vyaria assume that Cain will do the same, so she decides to sleep. But suddenly, Vyaria feels something nice and warm beside her. As she opens her eyes, she is taken aback to see Cain sleeping by her side. Watching him sleeping, Vyaria realizes that all this time, she's thought of him as being cold and heartless, but he is a human being just like her. Getting closer to the sleeping Cain, Vyaria wonders if what she feels now is happiness. Suddenly, Cain's voice surprises Vyaria, and her head accidentally hits Cain's chin. Cain affectionately assures her that he's okay. He then remembers something to tell her, that he won't do anything until she's ready. He states that he won't lay a finger on her until she gives him permission, and that is his way of demonstrating his sincerity. In that moment, Vyaria remembers that Cain in her previous life never spent a single night with her. She wonders about Cain in front of her right now, so she asks him if he will be able to make love to her. Cain's soft gaze answers her that if she'd allow him, he would do so right that moment. Hearing that, Vyaria is taken aback, as that is something she desperately yearned for in her previous life. No matter how much she expressed her love for him, Cain never even looked at her. She went crazy, wanting to be loved by Cain at that time, and remembering those moments makes her cry so hard. Cain tries to calm her down and gives her a warm embrace, even though he has no clue what he's supposed to do. Cain assures her that they don't have to rush things. For now, they can just sleep together like that. Meanwhile, in the city, everyone is celebrating the royal wedding, expressing their happiness to see Cain and Vyaria looking happy at the ceremony. Hearing that, Franz thinks otherwise. He believes that it's when Vyaria is crying in sorrow and despair that she shines the most. Tonight is the first soiree held by King Cain himself since his accession. It's a dream come true for Vyaria to be able to dance with Cain like this. Cain constantly reminds her that he loves her. Vyaria wonders if Cain arrives and he still doesn't show a change of heart. Will she be able to trust his words then? While taking a short break, Vyaria asks permission to leave for the restroom. But on her way there, she's intercepted by Franz, who suddenly pulls her into a room. He forcefully pins Vyaria down and tries to touch her. Vyaria feels helpless, but keeps shouting until the guards come and rescue her as she faints. Cain patiently waits for Vyaria to wake, and when Vyaria regains consciousness, she can't remember anything. Cain is taken aback by that situation. According to the doctor, Vyaria must have suffered a great deal of emotional trauma, which must be the cause of her memory loss. Hearing that, Cain feels deep remorse that he shouldn't have left Vyaria's side back at the soiree. In a rage, he decides to indict Franz with a felony and incarcerate him up north. Cain never stops trying to express his love to Vyaria. But a year goes by without any significant improvements whatsoever. One day, Vyaria overhears the maids talking about the descendant of the king. But since the queen doesn't remember a thing, they can't expect anything. So when Cain and Vyaria are having their tea time, Vyaria brings up the topic, asking Cain why he won't make love to her. Cain is surprised and blushes all over his face, asking why Vyaria is asking such a thing. Vyaria then explains that despite their marriage being a year old, it's strange that they never sleep together. Calming down, Cain tells her that back then, he made a promise to her. Vyaria states that now she's giving him permission to touch her, but Cain expresses that he loves her more than anything and says that if she doesn't remember who he is, then what's the point of making love to her? Later that night, while Cain and Vyaria are sleeping, suddenly a loud thunderclap wakes Vyaria up. Out of nowhere, a mysterious girl appears before them, shocking Vyaria. The mysterious girl asks Vyaria what she's doing there, and Vyaria is taken aback that the girl knows her name. Hearing the commotion, Cain awakens and quickly covers his wife, shouting to the guards to arrest the mysterious girl. But as the girl sees Cain, she greets him by telling him that she missed him so much. At that time, Vyaria was 16 years old, and just like in her previous life, Kana arrived at the kingdom once again. Kana then reveals that she knows everything, though Cain and Vyaria seem to have no idea what's going on. Vyaria wonders why she feels intimidated by Kana's presence as it's her first time meeting her. Kana acts bossy, claiming that she's a traveler from another world. Vyaria wonders why she suddenly feels on edge, as if she's forgetting something important. Cain decides to hire extra guards for Vyaria, and as he introduces them, one of them is Wizard. However, it appears that Vyaria also doesn't remember who Wizard is. Cain then goes to the library to find information about a traveler from another world. While he is reading, suddenly Kana appears. Kana approaches Cain and claims that she can be useful to him because she comes from a different world, unlike his wife, Vyaria. As she tries to draw her face closer to Cain and touch his face, Cain immediately slaps her hand away. He then states that Vyaria has the qualities of being a great queen and her concern is unnecessary. Kana leaves the library feeling annoyed that Cain didn't fall for her at all. She finally found her way back to this world. But it seems this world is slightly different from the one she landed in last time. So she thinks she needs to take things up a notch. Kana came back to become the queen and live a luxurious life, but in order to do that, she must get rid of Vyaria first. She plots to take action before the future gets twisted any further. Kana takes a step to get closer to Cain even more. Seeing them from afar, Vyaria wonders what they're talking about. Suddenly, she overhears some maids talking about Kana becoming the next queen. Vyaria is shocked by this, and then returns to her room. Meanwhile, Cain feels annoyed by Kana, who expresses her desire to learn about their culture. So Cain tells her that he can arrange a tutor for her. Then Kana plans to visit Vyaria. Upon finding Vyaria crying in her room, Kana asks for confirmation if Vyaria has lost all her memories. She tells her that she can help her recover the lost memories. Desperate to regain her memories, Vyaria tries to trust Kana. Wizard, who is on guard duty nearby, sees Vyaria and Kana going somewhere and wonders where they're headed. Kana takes Vyaria to a place she's never been before. Once they arrive, Kana informs Vyaria that she was crowned queen after Vyaria's execution, and she needs Vyaria to die for her again this time. This revelation shocks Vyaria to her core. Without hesitation, Kana pushes Vyaria into a nearby pool and states that she won't let Vyaria alter history because there's no version of it where Vyaria survives. Kana reveals that in a past life, Cain came to his senses when he saw Vyaria's gibbeted head, and after that, he exiled Kana from the kingdom. She vows that this time she'll make sure Cain doesn't see even the smallest trace of her remains. While struggling to breathe, Vyaria still doesn't fully understand what Kana is talking about. She can't hold her breath any longer and begins to drown deep inside the water. But as she's drowning, she remembers Cain's love for her, and that was her second chance at life. She promised herself that she was going to live happily this time. Fortunately, Wizard arrives just in the nick of time and shuts Kana down. He quickly saves Vyaria, who has already regained her memories. In a panic, Cain rushes in and hugs Vyaria, relieved that she is still alive. Kana, who has regained consciousness, shouts at Cain, asking why he chose Vyaria over her and tells him that Vyaria had an affair with Franz. However, Cain makes it clear that Vyaria is the only queen who will stand beside him, even if death parts them, and that Kana will never be queen. Kana can't accept that and calls out to Cain by his name. With a piercing gaze, Cain states that the only person who can address him by his name is his wife, the one and only Queen Vyaria herself. Cain instructs the guards to seize Kana, although she continues to cry and shout as it wasn't what she wanted. Once they're back in the palace, Cain expresses his worries, embracing Vyaria tightly. He then asks if Vyaria holds a grudge against him, to which Vyaria is surprised. Cain explains that when he was trying to find information about a traveler from another world, he came across an interesting book that describes future events after Kana's arrival in the kingdom. Apparently, it's a warning left by Smitry to help Cain avoid falling for Kana's charm. Cain finally understands why Vyaria was so afraid of him from their first meeting, because Vyaria also came back from the future. Cain sincerely apologizes for what his other self did to her, hoping it would ease her pain. However, Vyaria says it won't be necessary, as she committed adultery and conceived a child, and her execution was the result of her unfaithfulness. She also mentions that as a mother who failed to protect her child's life, if she forgets about her child, there would be nobody left to mourn for them. She states that as long as she has those memories, she'll never be able to forgive herself, and that she doesn't deserve to be happy. Seeing Vyaria in tears, Cain reassures her that he will always remember that child with her. He promises not to forget what his other self did to her, and that he won't make the same foolish mistake ever again. He then proposes to Vyaria once again, now that he knows everything. He declares that he wants to be with her until the very last moment, as he will always love her and only her. Hearing those words from Cain, Vyaria is left perplexed, wondering why Cain would continue to love her even after learning that she came back from the future. Cain extends his hand, assuring Vyaria that he will do whatever it takes to change the future and that they can live a happy life together. Though Vyaria knows she will never forget what happened to her in her previous life, Cain's words resonate with her. She realizes that the present world is her life now, and if the happiness she has always dreamed of is waiting for her down this path, perhaps she can finally move on. While strolling around, Vyaria meets Wizard, who is ready to leave the palace. He mentions that his job is done and there is no one in Vyaria's way anymore. He wishes her all the best and bids her goodbye. Franz was sent to a polar region with extremely cold weather, where he is to be confined forever, not even released in death. As for Kaina, who was under house arrest, she was granted clemency due to her status as someone from another world. However, one day she mysteriously disappeared despite a search party combing through the entire kingdom. As they spend time together, Cain invites Vyaria to celebrate the new year the following morning. Vyaria is excited, as it has always been her dream to watch the sunrise with Cain on New Year's Day. Cain smiles upon hearing this. There's an old saying that those who watch the sunrise together on New Year's Day will live happily ever after. Vyaria wonders if Cain is aware of it as well. Cain expresses his hope that Vyaria will trust him with her heart one day. Cain's words, his arms holding her, and his gentle caresses gradually melt away the fear that had built inside Vyaria. Suddenly, Vyaria declares that her heart belongs only to Cain. Cain is overjoyed to hear this, and, with a soft gaze, encourages Vyaria to call him by his name. As she does, he kisses her gently. It's been about a year since Vyaria married Cain, and on that night, they had a do-over of their wedding night. The next day, Vyaria is in the garden when Cain comes looking for her. He is surprised to see the blue roses there. He recalls when he sent Vyaria a bouquet of blue roses because he was desperate not to be hated by her. He admits that back then, he was still very young and couldn't think beyond relying on the language of flowers. But now, he sees a rare and beautiful flower blooming right in front of him. He mentions that Vyaria is his little miracle, his precious blue rose. Flowers can have different meanings in different situations, and in this case, Vyaria no longer has to fear the blue roses because she has realized that nothing is impossible as long as they're together. Blue roses now represent a miracle for both of them. That's a wrap on this story. But don't worry, we've got another awesome series coming your way. Thanks for watching. Hope you had a fantastic time.